Hi, everyone, and welcome to a very special Insomnia Insights episode with Coach Alina. Welcome.
Hi, Danielle. Happy to be here.
Thanks so much for joining. And today we're going to talk about this scenario where someone actually has become afraid of everything becoming a sleep effort. What if this is a sleep effort? What if everything I do becomes a sleep effort? Which we have come across that not, every now and then we come across this very scenario. And before we jump into it, though, I want to share with everyone that you have joined our immunity program as a coach, which is amazing. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really excited to start working there. And actually, today is the beginning of the first week. I am moderating, so yeah, it's really nice. Nice news.
Right? Yes, it's amazing. And I actually had, so for those who are confused out there, we now have two immunity programs. Yourself and Coach Michelle have one with 40 plus students, and myself and Veronica are moderating the second one where we have 3 students right now. And I just came from our first ever drop-in class. So that was very nice as well. But anyways, excited about this. And our today's topic came about because one of our coaches said she had a client who was kind of like over and over worrying about, like, what if this becomes a sleep effort? What if this becomes a sleep effort? And then you shared something about intentional sleep efforts, which I thought, like, we have to talk about this. So let's start though at the very basics. For somebody who's kind of new to the channel and is like, what are you guys talking about? What is a sleep effort? How would you answer this?
Well, sleep effort is basically anything that we do that has intention to make sleep happen, force sleep, or make it more likely for sleep to happen. So basically, it can be any activity or even like some thinking process that has a certain desire to obtain a particular outcome. And basically, the way like the why the sleep effort thing is important for like insomnia recovery is that sleep efforts, first of all, they don't really make us sleep, because sleep is a natural process that just happens to us, not something that we actively do. But also sleep efforts reinforce the fear of being awake, which paradoxically leads to actually having more struggles with sleep. And therefore sleep effort is something that kind of like does a kind of like disservice to us. By trying harder, using different tricks and tips, we are actually teaching the brain that sleep is really in danger and it has to be protected. And therefore, the more fear and hyperarousal we feel when it comes to bedtime or sleep topic in general. So yeah, and basically the work towards recovery or being free from insomnia is lies through, first of all, kind of abandoning the sleep efforts, showing that it's okay or to be awake at night, and that sleep doesn't need any protection or any sort of actions from our side, so we can fully trust our natural sleep mechanisms.
Very
So
nicely said. And just, for people tuning in here to contextualize this and give some examples, these are the things like, the hormone, like the Chinese melatonin, the supplements, and avoidance too, avoiding caffeine, avoiding going out with people, avoiding trips, things of that nature are kind of like, are what we call sleep efforts, right? And you explained why is really helpful to know about, which then can lead to, for some people it's kind of just like nice, like, oh, I understand sleep efforts, and they kind of naturally, shifting away from them, and sleep happens more easily. But of course, a thing that can happen is when we can say, like, oh, I'm starting to, go out with friends again, but what if that's actually a sleep effort? What if what I'm doing now actually is a sleep effort that I shouldn't be doing? What if we start, what if that happens? Like, can you elaborate on this, that, this kind of process?
yeah, sure. I've been in that place many times during my recovery process, where when I found myself in a place where literally everything I can think of was an effort, or I could imagine that being an effort. So naturally, when I was kind of like learned that sleep efforts kind of create the problem or maintain the problem of sleep, then I became super vigilant towards um, trying to not make any efforts at all. So and then it would be exactly as you said. For example, I would go like, okay, I should not be afraid to go out in the evening, and then I would do, and then my mind will go like, okay, but what you're really doing here probably is that you're trying to fix your insomnia, because by going somewhere you want to kind of fix through that. And then I would really kind of begin to overthink the whole thing, and that would leave me kind of like paralyzed in terms of like, I don't know what to choose. And that can be very frightening place to be. I remember just lying in bed and not knowing whether getting up from bed is an effort or not, or staying in bed is an effort or not. So that can be really a quite unpleasant place to be. And I know that many people also kind of told me about the basically fearing the efforts themselves. So usually this is kind of like a tricky situation, because when we think about like, okay, but like stop trying like to sleep, that this is something will lead you towards like restful sleep or peaceful sleep. But then you realize that there is no possibilities left, because everything can become an effort. So that's something that is quite common. And I would also say that it is common, it is usually a sign of a progress. I know it might sound very kind of counterintuitive or not believable, but in reality, what I noticed is people who actually advanced on the journey, who saw that letting go of efforts actually allows natural sleep drive to show up, and leads to sleep. Eventually, they get into this kind of like a trap where they realize, okay, now I really know that this is sleep, like sleep efforts are what prevent me from from recovery. So I'm going to go on some sort of like a witch hunt for it. So they really become like very vigilant and make sure they don't make any sleep effort, which can lead them to this kind of like situation. But I don't perceive it as something that um, that they did something wrong, or something is not going according to the general kind of like journey. But I just see it as a kind of like natural part of the journey, when eventually we also need to let go of trying to remove all the efforts. I don't know if that makes sense, but maybe later on we can elaborate on that a bit more.
Yeah, no, I think it makes a lot of sense. And you highlighted how, when we have this clarity, it's super helpful, but it can also lead us to a place where we question everything we do with like, is this a sleep effort? Am I doing a sleep effort?
Yeah,
Like, which can become its own kind of struggle, which can, keep us
yeah,
awake, et cetera, et cetera. So
yeah,
basically, our third point is going to be like, when this has happened, when somebody out there in our community here recognizes them as like, oh yeah, I'm this person, I'm so vigilant of sleep efforts, I'm kind of afraid of them. How do we meet this situation? Which you already said that you see it as actually a nice sign. It reveals a lot of insight, and it typically is not as tricky as it may seem. But generally speaking, what are your thoughts on how we meet this situation?
well, one of the ways is just simple awareness can already take away the power of that sleep effort. Meaning that when we know that something is an effort, and we don't really, we know that it's always our bodies that do the job of sleeping, then it becomes kind of like more, how to say, unimportant whether we do that thing or not. So then we feel less pressured, and then the choice can become more natural. We realize like, well, I'm not sure if drinking this chamomile tea is an effort or not, but I know that either way it's not what is going to control my sleep. So do I still feel like drinking it or not? So then just simple awareness can be something that neutralizes an effort. And then another kind of thing is that when we get into this kind of loop of trying to uh, kind of identify what is an effort and what is not an effort, it can become kind of infinite. Because like, let's say when I'm deciding like, okay, should I get up or not, then I can find so many ways why, like, why getting up is an effort and why getting up is not an effort. So at some point the process of figuring it out, it's pointless. You will not arrive to any kind of like very logical decision, like, okay, this is not an effort. It's not like there is some machine that tells you like not an effort or yes effort. So so there won't be such point. But sometimes just simply observing what the brain does when it kind of gets into these problems, or this kind of witch hunt for identifying sleep effort, just observing the whole process could be really helpful, and it can already resolve some of the pressure that kind of that comes like from the whole like process of figuring out, just seeing that this process being kind of pointless ultimately. And now the third one is more like, maybe it's more like from behavioral standpoint, but when we develop fear of something, right, and naturally the whole idea here is to not run away, for example, from wakefulness. If we are afraid of wakefulness, when we actually expose ourselves to this wakefulness and realize that it's not actually an enemy, and it can be actually be, it is quite it is harmless and can be actually quite pleasant, then we change the whole relationship with it. We are not feeling so much pressure while being awake. And the same can be applied also to sleep efforts, because when sleep effort becomes the object of fear, then the solution to that might be also paradoxical. How about actually deciding to make intentional sleep efforts, just to show that making sleep effort is not going to sabotage your journey? Because sleep efforts in itself, they're really like, as actions, they're harmless, basically. It's something like, whether you get up or not, it doesn't change the nature of sleep. But if the mind is really convinced, like, oh, you have to get up or you have to stay, sometimes just knowing that, okay, I will do it, even if it's sleep effort, I'm okay with this. So that can already help us feel more okay, even if we do sleep efforts. And I know it might sound very kind of counterintuitive, because we've been telling, like in the beginning, that sleep efforts is something that perpetuate insomnia. But I would say, when we develop the fear of sleep efforts itself, sometimes it's good to show that to the brain that sleep efforts are kind of like, they're safe at the same time. Of course, like, we are not talking here about like behavior that is like obviously dangerous, for example, like overusing some medication, or I don't know, whatever, like substance abuse. We are not talking about that. We are talking about really just innocent, like this kind of everyday decisions, like to get up or not to get up, to watch I don't know, YouTube videos or not, to listen to podcast or not, to read or not, meditate or not, do breathing exercises or not. So just knowing that it's okay to do sleep efforts. So that can already decrease a lot of pressure.
Yeah, no, it's exactly. I agree 100%. And in fact, it was when you said this in I think our Slack group for coaches. You talked about how you said, like, I often teach about intentional sleep efforts. You presented us as kind of like a concept or an idea, and that actually was, I was like, oh, we have to talk about this on the channel. It's very, very. I think that could be really, really helpful. And I have very little to add, just maybe to tie this back to where we started. And we talked about what is a sleep effort, and I gave examples of, like, using melatonin, or like avoiding coffee or something like that. But in reality, as you point out, it's not that specific behavior that matters. It's like completely unimportant and not very interesting. It's the idea behind it. It's the effort itself. It's the trying to achieve something that is tricky. And then when we're just deciding, like, oh, I'm just going to do this, then it's kind of like diffuses the whole, like, tension and struggle behind it. So I think that intentional sleep effort can be really, really helpful, right?
Yeah, because intentional sleep effort ultimately is not really a sleep effort, because I mean, really, because we know that we are doing it not because we really believe, or we are tricked by believing that, oh, by doing this, I'm going to somehow control my sleep or make it more obedient. But we more like, we know that the brain really craves to do something, so it's kind of dominating. The desire to do something can be so dominating, and sometimes suppressing the desire can lead to more pressure, rather than just allowing ourselves just to do whatever the mind wants, deal with it, and then just and observe it while the brain is doing it. Just not being like kind of identified with the process, but more become an observer, but also like allowing the brain to just really how to say, see for itself that there is no need to protect sleep. So that's where intentional sleep efforts can be quite helpful. But
I
as well as other points what we mentioned earlier.
Yeah, they're also very helpful. Yeah, A and B as well. And for those of you who wasn't obvious for you who was watching this, I just wrote them down as you were speaking. We hadn't actually planned this, like the A, B, and C there, but I thought it turned out
Yeah,
really
that was
nice.
nice.
So yeah, I will thank you so much. And as always, share your thoughts in the comment section. If you have follow-up questions, you can post them there. And we will look forward to having more episodes together and seeing you guys back again, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll do
Okay.
that. Bye, Alina. Bye,
Bye.
everyone.